find it funny when people say that modern gaming has become worse over the years. I mean, it has, but only within the mainstream. Everything that goes mainstream and continues to thrive off its blatant monetary methods will progressively become more money hungry and lose its quality and passion in the process. But again, that's the mainstream. And while the mainstream does tend to lead the pack in most cases, sometimes you have to look outside of the system that everyone follows. Because while mainstream games have been losing their quality and passion, that doesn't necessarily speak to all of modern gaming. That only speaks to the mainstream, which was going to happen eventually. Now, usually the alternative that people suggest to players who are unhappy with these big budget IPs is to jump into the endless and abstract stream of indie games, where passion and unique ideas reign supreme and where gaming has actually become even better, for the most part. But there's one problem. Indie games don't have the scale or production value of AAA games, and they also don't always have the best quality. Indie games may be interesting and different, but they don't always look or feel polished like AAA games do. Because of that, gamers who endlessly complain about AAA games, but always and only play those games, will reject the lower budget and much more passionate alternative. They would rather complain about how their favorite franchises have fallen than play as a goose for 3 wacky hours. But what everyone seems to forget from the indie and AAA space is that there's also a middle ground, and that is where AA games come in. AA or mid-market games fuse the artistic passion of indie games with the similarly ambitious scale or high production value of AAA, making it the best alternative for players who are looking for those games that match the quality of their favorites from the PS2 and PS3 360 era, when gaming was at its undeniable peak. Almost every creative medium does this, where the mainstream will progressively corrupt what you liked back in the day, but where a middle ground or alternative subverts that corruption into something that reminds you of why you liked that particular thing in the first place. Happens in music, books, films, and obviously video games. So, I wanted to shed some light on why AA games are the definitive way to go if you're tired of all the money-hungry crap going on in the mainstream and want something that feeds your reminiscent passion. It all starts with an ambitious and somewhat avant-garde concept, from the most abstract of ideas to streamlined epics. But while indie games can do the abstract and feel epic, AA games can further enhance these concepts because of their larger budgets and their slightly larger dev teams. In other words, AA can be as art house and experimental as possible on a larger scale. Hellblade and Indica are perfect examples of this. Games that go against the mainstream grain in terms of concepts and identity, but at the same time they feel akin to those mainstream games in terms of their production value. Hellblade feels like a AAA game from its consistently high-quality cinematics to the stellar audio design, but the story it tells and the gameplay it presents is a teeny bit too left field and risky for giants like Ubisoft or EA to finance with such a budget. But we'll get into the risks and budgets later on. But AA is not all about being bizarre on a larger scale. It's also about emulating the top genres with an extra layer of soul and unique qualities. The best examples of this are Mirror's Edge and Remember Me. These two games, with their quality and their scope, could easily fool you into thinking that they are AAA in one way or another. At least I was. But while certain AA games, the cinematic ones in this case, can fool you in their presentation and scale, you might pick up something about these games that hints at a slight, all style no substance quality when it comes to their gameplay. And this is unfortunately universal for many story-driven AA experiences. Hellblade, A Plague Tale, Remember Me, and I don't know, Indica, all share something in common. They have amazing presentations and mostly unique stories, but their gameplay is just above average. As much as I love Hellblade, I can't deny that the gameplay loop is lacking. It goes something like this. Find a door, find 3 symbols, unlock the door, fight off some dudes with a fun but easy combat system, rinse and repeat for 5 hours. Same goes for Remember Me. This is easily one of my favorite games of all time, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that the combat system is limited. Which is unfortunate because the combat system presented here has some interesting elements that reek of potential. You can customize combos and certain attacks are equipped with perks that you can switch around. But it's the room for experimentation that is limited, as in you can only create about 3 different combos at a time, meaning that you'll be repeating the same 3 combos that you're comfortable with in almost every combat encounter. You see where I'm going with this? As many times as I've used the word scale, it is an important factor here that differentiates it from indie games and places it just under AAA. But even then, it comes to show that even with a larger scale, there can only be one consistent focus. You either focus on the story and presentation, or you prioritize gameplay. Now of course there are AA games that are consistent in both regards. Games like Fury with its well-written and compellingly presented exposition that hints at a much deeper world and lore, and Kena Bridge of Spirits with its great gameplay and adventurous narrative. Both these games have all their qualities appropriately complement each other, but all I'm saying is that there are going to be some slip-ups and some priority issues on the way. Now, do I think this makes AA games lesser than their ambitions? No, not at all. In fact, I'd go on to say that I don't really care all that much if the gameplay is still solid in its foundation. Because while I do find Hellblade's gameplay loop to be predictable after an hour in, I love how the combat feels and works, even if it's fairly easy to remember, and I don't necessarily mind the simplistic exploration puzzles. But now, let's look at the risks that these games take and the budgets they are allowed to play with. The reason why everyone's favorite AAA and blockbuster franchises in the world of games and films have been slacking recently is because a lot of them try to play it safe. Why, one might ask? There's simply too much money on the line. The heavier the brick, the harder the impact. One bad risk could blow a huge chunk in the revenue of a big company. And that is too much money being lost. Is it the big studios and higher executives that should take the blame for all this mess? Yes, but partially no. Let me take a page out of my own book, The Concept of Fearing What You Don't Understand, which is a video you should go check out. It's great. People like to be comfortable, naturally. So how do you stay comfortable? By engaging in what you're familiar with. Everyone has something that falls into their comfort zone. Whether it's a favorite movie or music album, you will always want to find something similar to that. That comfort zone leaks over into the entertainment business as well. People love superhero action movies, sci-fi epics, rom-coms, teen dramas and the like. And so because that's what everyone is consistently watching, that's where the money and appeal is. And just like that, these big companies that put their money on the line for your entertainment find a comfort zone that they can bleed money out of. People can complain all they want about movies and games becoming worse and more repetitive over the years. But these same people forget that they are the ones who caused this, because they are the ones who fund this type of crap. And because there are too many people who are unwilling to step outside of their comfort zone, which is dangerous, this kind of crap will keep getting made. Why should a big company shed so much money on something that not even the majority of the fan base is interested in? Why should risks be taken when the safe play is doing wonders? That is why every company with millions and billions of cash on the line is not willing to take risks. Why the hell should they? Anyways, the average AAA game today costs over $50 million to make. Some AAA games double that, or as we could see by this year, triple that. Whereas AA games are usually around $2 to $20 million. The bigger the budget, the more you try to maximize profits. And the only way to do that is to have a product that's accessible and fairly easy to digest. No matter how innovative and experimental creators want to be, when there's a huge and risky investment behind it all, a creative compromise has to be made. Let me ask you this. Why does an art house entertainment sell as well as Hollywood blockbusters do? A handful of good reasons. Sometimes the content is far too experimental to market. It lacks the spectacle that people love from blockbusters, and they are sometimes far too thematic to appeal to the casual moviegoer. Art house entertainment doesn't appeal to the casual audience. It appeals to nerds, or people who are willing to open their mind to something a bit unconventional, which is rarely the case. The comfort zone can be very dangerous. Everybody wants spectacle, but not everybody wants an experimental story where we have to search up what the hell the ending means. When a big budget entertainment piece gets too complex, executives will breathe down the necks of creatives and interfere with the vision to prioritize entertainment and spectacle over commentary and in-depth storytelling. It happens way too often. But with a medium-sized budget, that creative interference that turns a passion project into an absolute nightmare is lessened just enough to allow for a larger-scaled art house piece. The budget isn't too outrageous to the point where executives have to compromise the creative vision to maximize profits. But the budget is also enough to look the part of a grander production. If you think about a lot of Hollywood and AAA flops, you'll realize that some things would have been very different if they had lower budgets. Let me give you some examples. Starting off with a movie, we have Assassin's Creed. Now, while the movie didn't flop by any means commercially, it wasn't critically successful, though I personally loved it. But if this was a mid-budget production, sure, the scale would have been decreased, but it would have been a much more cohesive movie. I mean, just look at the deleted scenes. There was more passion and depth going on in these scenes than what was allowed in the final product. In fact, I believe that a lot of video game movies have been ruined by these bigger budgets due to the lack of trust in creative freedom and for the mere sake of squeezing the money behind an IP. As for a game that could have used a lower budget, hear me out on this one. Call of Duty. If Treyarch could make a AA Black Ops game, it could honestly be the best military FPS ever made. The budget wouldn't necessarily warrant goofy microtransactions that require the identity of the franchise to be warped for some quick bucks. And development time wouldn't be so strict that the game would have to be rushed out without all of the planned launch content. There are so many entertainment products out there with budgets that are far too high for their own cohesion and comfort, where risk-taking is dangerous and therefore results in the lack of innovation. It is truly unfortunate. Fortunately, the AA market continues to show us that bigger isn't always better. All it takes is the right priorities and a cohesive direction. Everybody has their own definitions of what makes a game great, but the two primary keywords that we look for are fun and entertaining. I'd be lying if I didn't say that I genuinely get excited when I see that an upcoming game that I'm interested in is from some kind of AA studio, because I know that I'll be getting a compelling fusion of passion and scale, a fusion that is far more compelling than the desperate cash grabs from AAA studios. The AA market reminds me of what I used to love from games of the 6th and 7th generation: realized ambition and genuinely unique experiences over monetization and exploitation. It is honestly refreshing and utterly exciting to transition from a bloated 100+ hour RPG like Assassin's Creed Valhalla to a much more focused 6-hour action-adventure like Remember Me. I would much prefer an adventure epic that I can finish in 2 sittings over a campaign that is padded out with a bunch of side quests that deviate from the main plotline. AA games like Hellblade and the original Mirror's Edge provide that streamlined structure while still providing enough depth in narrative for the former and gameplay for the latter. I have no idea where this requirement to have 500+ hours worth of content came from, but it clearly doesn't appeal to me. Or maybe it does until it hits the point where it is required for me to spend 40 to 50 hours doing optional content just to finish the main campaign. And by the time I finish the main story, I've probably already uninstalled the game at least 3 times. So if you're like me and don't exactly crave the 500-hour experience, nor the rushed and unoriginal cash grabs of the AAA space, AA is the best place to start. trust me. From co-op adventures to psychological horrors and surreal thrillers to hack and slash games, AA puts the soul back into interactive entertainment, and it is wholly refreshing. The AA market is like a surreal alternative to a beloved medium that has lost its roots. A perfect middle ground with the balance that once thrived in its earlier, more realized days of play. The soul of today's indies mixed with the similar quality of today's giants. Who doesn't find that appealing? And while the overly capitalized nature of big budget gaming was always meant to happen, as does any other big money-making medium, we never expected things to hit such a new low. Not only in the gaming industry, but equally as bad in the mainstream film industry. Things are getting far too out of hand and we clearly can't deal with it. I know I can't and I'm tired of it. But like all things, there's always a subversion, an alternative that rejects the crappy conventions of a crappy trend. Whether that's the creative freedom of art house films, the do-it-yourself and do-what-you-want mentality of alternative and indie music, or in this case, the artistic merit and semi-blockbuster scale of AA games. I know this video may come off as a partial rant, and it technically is, but it's also a look to the future and my personal acknowledgement of the platform we have for medium scale and independent voices. I mean, I was always aware of the indie scene in both games and movies, but it's only now that I'm truly diving into the fray of independent entertainment. As an aspiring filmmaker, a screenwriter to be exact, the independent scene looks more and more appetizing the deeper I dive into it. And I'm very excited to see what it has to offer despite the hardships that I'm already aware of. As for the future of AA and indie games, it's looking quite bright and endlessly exciting. It's amazing to see how accessible the gaming space is to up-and-coming developers. The platform that has been built to promote and publish unique and soulful games that aren't easy to market is nothing short of remarkable, and the games themselves applaudable. The gaming industry may be dying and screwing up on the big stage, but the mid-market and independent names are the ones to look out for if you want to remember what this medium was all about in the first place. In fact, the AA space has always been strong for the past 30 or so years, with no signs of stopping anytime soon. And the thought of that just makes me so damn relieved. I'll admit that this is quite bittersweet, but this feels like the end of an era for me. Who knows what might happen next, but I think I might be done here for the time being, as I move on to the next stage of my life. It's a shame since I only just revamped the style and the aesthetic of this channel, and this year I've made the best videos that I've been meaning to make for a while, with the utmost artistry and polish. I've still got the 2024 gaming wrap up to edit and I'll probably only upload it on the first day of the new year, but after that it's off to the races. This might be my last video essay on here for a while or even indefinitely, and I never thought I'd be saying that, but damn it, here we are. I've been doing this video essay thing for about 4 years now, and YouTube in general for almost double that. I'll still be doing the music thing, but even then that's a different medium. But I just wanted to say thanks to the folks that stuck around and for those who thought that my unpolished but passionate content was worth the time and attention, i.e. my most watched videos on the channel. Even though those videos may have not aged well and reeked of untapped potential compared to what this year's videos have been like, along with my late prioritization of polished video making, I still adore the time and effort I spent on making those videos at least watchable and enjoyable for thousands of foreign eyes. But until the gaming wrap up and maybe some other time, stay safe, stay entertained, take care, and take it easy. Cheers.